Okay, today I will be speaking to you on the incorporation of a native cool season grass into forage production systems of north-central Mississippi. Before us scientists can conduct any experiment, we must first understand how it will be significant for the public at large. My project is significant for Mississippi because in Mississippi we have just over 825,000 hectares of pasture and hay acreage, with 72% of that in pasture and 28% of that being in hay. On that land, utilizing all of that land, we have right at 1 million head of cattle. Now, putting dollars to beef, that gives us a standing crop value of $1.68 billion. And with ethanol production siphoning off 40% of the corn produced here in the United States, grass-fed beef is the natural choice. But that's not the only reason for this endeavor. There are also certain producers who only want native grass stands in their pastures, not only for livestock purposes, but for wildlife purposes as well. And there are also federal and state programs that will aid in the establishment of these native grass stands. Well, in the southeastern portion of the United States, warm season grasses are the backbone of the forage production system. But when warm season grasses grow dormant, that leaves you with a gap that you have to fill in with alternatives to your livestock. Well, cool season grasses fill in that gap to where you don't have to use as much feeding of supplements to sustain your animals over that cool period. At Mississippi State, that is what I am dealing with, a cool season grass known as southeastern wild rye. And what we know isn't a lot, but what we don't know is a lot more. So what we know about southeastern wild rye is it is a North American native perennial bunch grass that has a friendly endophyte inside it. What we don't know are the certain management practices of that grass. And what we also don't know are the nutritive value and forage qualities when we implement those management practices. So that's where I come in. And my objective of this study is to determine the relationship between harvest frequency and nitrogen fertilization to maximize yield in southeastern wild rye as compared to two commonly used cool season perennial grasses of orchard grass and tall fescue. This study also conducted nutritive value and forage quality, but due to the time constraints of this presentation, I will only be speaking on dry matter yield. So, why focus on nitrogen rates and harvest intervals? Well, Snyder and Leap in 2007 pointed out that the main goal of fertilization is to produce high-quality herbage while yielding an amount adequate to minimize the need for supplemental feed. Ball and others in 2007 reported that forage plants require large amounts of nitrogen, but that they need more than one application during the growing season in order to compensate for the loss due to leaching and other means. Also, Snyder and Leap pointed out that cool season grasses don't have the potential to produce as much as warm season grasses, but that means that they do not require as much nitrogen. So, what I want to know is, what is the maximum amount that we can yield by applying the certain amount of nitrogen needed, and how many times do we need to apply that? So my study was designed as a split strip plot design of 4 replications with 3 treatments that were re-randomized within each rep. The first split being cool season grass of southeastern wild rye, orchard grass, and tall fescue. On top of that, the second treatment being 4 harvest intervals located in strips running east to west across each cool season grass species, with 1 harvest being at 112 days, 2 harvests with 1 every 56 days, 3 harvests with 1 every 37 days, and 4 harvests with 1 every 28 days. The third treatment was nitrogen application, which was conducted in 4 split nitrogen applications of 0, 134, 202, and 269 kilograms per hectare nitrogen of 3300S nitrogen fertilizer. So, with all that said, how did we do it? Well, in October of 2013, we broke ground and planted every 2 by 3 meter plot using an 8-row Almaco planter. From there, from April to July of 2014, in this establishment year, we harvested at a 10 centimeter cutting height and 128 centimeter cutting width. From there, we fertilized each plot accordingly in split applications of the nitrogen rates every 28 days. So we took subsamples of the harvested material, weighed them, dried them, reweighed them so that we could get dry matter percentage per plot. We analyzed the data, and that's what brings me in front of you here today. I brought you the results. So all the results were conducted using PROC-GLM and SAS statistical analysis software at the 0.05 significance level. There was a significant effect due to rep, harvest, species by harvest, and nitrogen. Notice that there is a significant effect due to the species by harvest interaction, which supersedes harvest, so we will not be focusing on that. And notice that there was also a significant effect due to rep, so it is good that we blocked the study across the field. So first we will focus on the harvest by species interaction. Across the x-axis you will see harvest by species, with the blue bars representing orchard grass, the red bars representing southeastern wild rye, and the green bars representing tall fescue, with the darkest bar from each color representing 1 harvest, the next lightest bar representing 2 harvests, the next lightest bar representing 3 harvests, and the lightest bar representing 4 harvests. And on the y-axis we have mean dry matter yield in kilograms per hectare. Across all harvest by species interactions, southeastern wild rye, harvested twice during the growing season, produced the most numerical mean dry matter yield, but it was not significantly greater than that of orchard grass harvested twice during the growing season. So now let's break it down per harvest to see which species produce the highest mean dry matter yield. So on the bar graph you will see that species is on the x-axis, with blue representing orchard grass, red representing southeastern wild rye, and green representing tall fescue. Along the y-axis we have mean dry matter yield in kilograms per hectare. I would like y'all to note that every harvest system will have a graph that is set up in the same manner. So across the single harvest system harvested on July 18th at the end of the 112 days, across all species, southeastern wild rye produced significantly greater mean dry matter yield than orchard grass and tall fescue. In the 2 harvest system harvested on May 23rd and July 18th, across all species, southeastern wild rye and orchard grass produced significantly greater mean dry matter yield than that of tall fescue. In the 3 harvest system, which was conducted on May 5th, June 11th, and July 18th, across all species, no species was significantly different from the other. And at the 4 harvest system harvested on April 25th, May 23rd, June 20th, and July 18th, across all species, this is where southeastern wild rye took a hit. Both orchard grass and tall fescue produced significantly greater mean dry matter yield than that of southeastern wild rye. Now I'd like for y'all to recall in the earlier slides we had nitrogen being a significant effect on the ANOVA table. So this graph shows that the nitrogen rates in kilograms per hectare on the x-axis was 0, 134, 202, and 269 being the rates represented by the orange bar, the purple bar, the yellow bar, and the blue bar respectively. And along the y-axis we have mean dry matter yield in kilograms per hectare. So across all nitrogen rates, the 269 kilogram per hectare rate produced the highest numerical mean dry matter yield, but it was not significantly greater than that of the 202 kilogram per hectare rate. I'd also like to note that the 0 kilogram per hectare nitrogen rate produced significantly less than all the others. So I know what you're thinking. What does this have to do with me? What is he talking about? Well, based on the first year's establishment data, if you're a producer in North Central Mississippi and you're focused on maximizing your yield and not nutritive value or forage quality, then use southeastern wild rye and orchard grass harvested twice during the growing season. And in order to maximize yield while reducing input cost, use 202 kilogram per hectare rate of nitrogen as opposed to 269 kilogram per hectare rate of nitrogen, since the yield since they yielded, was not significantly different from one another. Here are my references. I'd like to thank Mississippi Ag and Forestry Experiment Station for funding my project, Doctors Brian Baldwin, Rocky Lemus, and Brett Rushing for having the patience with me, Jesse Morrison, Judson LeCompte, Spencer Smith, and Matt Thornton for being there, other graduate students that helped me along the way, and Brian Smith and Tanner Ainsworth for their hard work on this project as well. And with that, I will entertain any questions you may have. Yes, sir.
Everything I've heard about these wild rides, they don't persist very well. What do you think is going to happen if you did this?
What we will be looking on is persistency. And what we have noticed is in the for-harvest system, wild rye is a native. And most native grasses that are the warm season grasses anyways, do not need to be harvested lower than 8 inches at max. 12 is good as low as they need to be harvested. We're harvesting it at a 10 centimeter, 4-inch height because that is what you would do for tall fescue and orchard grass. The wild rye is not coming back as well as we'd like. That's why we had a lower mean dry matter yield in that for-harvest system. Yes, sir.
You were mob grazing in North Mississippi. Do you plant orchard grass or would you plant this wild rye?
If I was mob grazing in North Central Mississippi, would I plant orchard grass or wild rye? Personally, I think that I honestly don't know a cow's perspective, but orchard grass feels more palatable, and it looks more lush out there in the field. So I would honestly probably plant orchard grass over southeastern wild rye. That is just one person's perspective. Yes, sir.
If you're considering any one of the three for wildlife, which one, or what was the difference in ground cover and canopy architecture?
The gentleman asked if I was using it for wildlife purposes, what was the greatest canopy closure over the ground. If I was using it for wildlife, so let's just say quail. Quail is a big thing right now that we're trying to get back in Mississippi. I would use southeastern wild rye because it doesn't have as big a canopy over the ground as the other two grasses do. It gets to a higher height and then it starts to lodge. The leaves do not cover the ground as much. So if the seeds fall, the quail can still move across the ground, or turkeys even, and get the seed more readily than with the orchard grass, which is completely across the ground and tall fescue.
Right, I think we need to move on to the next presentation. Yes,
Thank you for your time.